So good evening and welcome to the Town of Air FY21 Budget and Annual Town Meeting Warrant Remote Public Forum. I'm Town Manager Robert Pomprian, and I'm joined this evening by Town Finance Manager Lisa Cabri and Assistant Town Manager Carly Antonellis, and we're broadcasting live from the Air Town Hall. We are truly living in an unprecedented time due to COVID-19. And as a result, it has been since March 9th, since the last public budget information session conducted by the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. And it's been since April 7th when the BOS approved and posted the town meeting warrant. Additionally, town meeting due to COVID-19 was postponed to Monday, June 15th at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium. Because of all of these unique circumstances, and we greatly appreciate the patience, cooperation, and understanding of all of the citizens of Air as we all navigate through this unprecedented time, we thought that in preparation for town meeting on Monday, June 15th, we would provide a public overview of the FY21 budget and an overview of the town meeting warrant for residents to be fully informed going to town meeting on Monday, June 15th at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium. So the outline for tonight's presentation, and we really want to get to the questions from the public and give a lot of time for that. That's the most important part. We're going to cover four topics as best as we can. It's a lot of material to cover. The first is we'll talk about the plan for town meeting on June 15th at 7 p.m. Then we'll do a FY21 budget overview, which will consist of the air finances during COVID-19, the town and BOS recommendation for town meeting due to COVID-19, and then Article 4, which is the FY21 omnibus budget, we will review. The third item, we'll do a summary overview of the 2020 annual town meeting warrant articles. We won't be going through every article in detail due to time constraints, as there are 35 articles, but we will give an overview of some of the highlights, and of course, you may have questions or comments on specific articles that we'll want to discuss. And then lastly, most importantly, we want to open it up for questions from residents, and when we get to that section, I'll ask folks to unmute their microphones, and if you could just state your name and then your question, and we'll be happy to answer your questions for you. So also just bear with us as we will be using the shared screen to show some documents from time to time. So we appreciate your patience there. So first, the plan for town meeting. State law does not allow the town to conduct the town meeting by remote or virtual participation. Many folks have asked that, and unfortunately, state law in Massachusetts requires that the town meeting be conducted as it always is in person. So we cannot do it remotely or virtually like we are tonight's meeting and many of the meetings that we do conduct. Additionally, folks have asked, do we have to have town meeting? And the answer is yes. The town meeting is still required to take place by June 30th for town meeting to approve the FY21 budget, as well as other items on the warrant. So as a result, the town, working with the High School Facilities Department, APAC, and Town IT, has implemented a plan of social distancing and sanitization to ensure that the town meeting is as safe and comfortable as possible for all. And you'll see up on the screen the public guidance that has been issued from the town, that is on the town's website. It's also posted at the town meeting posting board, that gives an overview of the plan on Monday, June 15th at 7 p.m. So we're asking all residents to come to town meeting at that time. You'll show up. We're asking everybody to wear a mask or face covering in accordance with the governor's face mask order. If you do not have a mask or forget a mask, we do have plenty of masks that we will provide. You'll come into the large foyer of the high school. The town clerk will have the sign-in tables spread out. So unlike past years, you won't be in the narrow vestibule, but you'll be spread out. You'll sign in. We'll provide you with a copy of the annual report, the town meeting warrant, the town's budget book, and any other information, and then you'll go into the auditorium. In the auditorium, there will be dedicated seating. We have measured out a 6-foot radius from each seat, and they'll be clearly marked, so you'll sit in any seat that's marked. And we're really asking for folks' participation and cooperation with this. The challenge is that town meeting is generally a very social event. People like to see friends and neighbors and sit next to each other and talk together. But in order to have this event with the social distancing protocols required, we ask folks to sit in the seats that put them 6 feet radius from everybody sitting in the auditorium. The auditorium normally holds 500 people. Applying social distancing, it will hold up to 85 people. If more than 85 people show up, which is a possibility, we have an overflow room in the cafeteria. In that room, there's additional seating that's 6 feet apart. There'll be a live feed, audio and visual, so the folks in the overflow room will be experiencing town meeting in real time. The moderator is appointing a deputy moderator, which he can do, who will facilitate that room. And when individuals have questions or comments or points from that room, they will be able to ask those in real time to the whole town meeting. And this model is used by some towns even under normal circumstances where there's an overflow. When you have a question at town meeting, unlike in the past, we were unable to have microphones in the aisles as it creates some social distancing issues. An individual is asked to stand up at their seat. A moderator will recognize the individual, state your name and address for the record, and state your question or comment. The town clerk will then repeat that question or comment into a microphone so folks in the overflow room can hear it, as well as everybody in the auditorium. And again, this is another piece of this unique circumstance. We're just asking for people's patience and cooperation as we move forward with that. And again, if there are any questions or concerns the public has prior to town meeting on Monday, please contact my office at the information at the bottom of the slide, 978-772-8220, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So that is the plan for Monday the 15th at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium, and we hope to see many of you there. So let's switch to the FY21 budget overview briefly and talk a little bit about the budget, and sort of you'll get a sneak preview of the presentation if you coming to town meeting. We'll be using some of this material for the voters there as well. So the first thing we want to talk about with respect to the budget is the town of Air's finances during COVID-19. We understand that a lot of people are very concerned overall about the economy and the finances due to COVID-19. And as I mentioned, we are in an unprecedented time, and a lot of these economic and financial impacts have yet to be fully realized. The first thing that we want to stress is that the town of Air does remain in a strong financial position during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and that we are taking proactive measures to prepare for the financial impacts of COVID-19. How do we know this? Well, first of all, as of June 15th, which will be Monday, the town will have collected almost all of the projected revenues for FY 2020. Based on the town's current financial data and economic trends as of today, the town is anticipating the potential financial impacts from COVID-19 to become realized sometime in the fall of 2020. The town implemented a town-wide spending policy on April 24th. The town has been tracking all COVID-19 related expenses and has developed an internal system for tracking revenues and spending. And the majority of these COVID-19 expenses at this time are due to public safety overtime, personal protective equipment for town employees, and IT technology for remote work and participation. To date, and this is as of June 10th, the town has incurred $40,996.01 in COVID-19 related expenses. It's important to note that a majority of these will actually be reimbursable from FEMA, MEMA, and/or the current CARES Act. And as I mentioned, again, most of these are due to public safety overtime, PPE, building disinfecting supplies, IT technology. It's also important for residents to know that their town has a strong financial reserves during this time. And up on the screen are the town of Air's current financial reserves. And it's important to note that none of these have been accessed to date during COVID-19. And many of these require, at a minimum, Board of Selectmen and, if not, town meeting approval to access. But you can see the stabilization fund has over 2.5 million, capital stabilization over 2 million, the unrestricted UDAG fund, which is under the Board of Selectmen, at 2.9 million. We have an unused tax levy capacity of over 2.6 million, and that is that the town is not taxing to the max on the levy, and I'm not saying that we're going to, but it's important to note that there is that additional financial capacity. And the certified free cash, which we're going to talk about momentarily again, right now is at 1.7 million. So right now there is a total reserves of just over $12 million that the town has for its financial health. Finally, under the CARES Act, which was passed on April 1st, this was the Federal Coronavirus Relief Act. In that act, 25% of the funding has to be eligible to cities and towns. The town of Air is eligible for up to $719,000 in reimbursements for COVID-19 related expenses between March 2020 and December 30th of 2020. So, and that will be ongoing. We just received our first reimbursement check in the amount of $28,000 today from this fund. So the town, through the Board of Selectmen, the Executive Buy Board, and the Finance Committee, and the town's internal finance departments, is being proactive with respect to the COVID-19 crisis. And there will be a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen and the town administration at town meeting to be further proactive in this COVID-19 era. And let me explain that plan. The town is expected to receive $995,000 in state aid for FY 2021. The good news is Air is not highly reliant on state aid. It's just under $1 million. Due to COVID-19, the state is anticipating at this time an approximate $7 billion shortfall in state revenues. So we have reason to believe that state aid will be impacted in the fall. And therefore, we're recommending the following plan. The town's internal finance team, consisting of the finance manager, my office, the town treasurer, tax collector, the town's assessor, a benefits payroll manager, recommended to the Board of Selectmen, which voted on May 19th, the following plan to address the potential financial impacts of COVID-19. And the Board of Selectmen will be recommending at town meeting that town meeting defers 3 articles, and that's Article 14, which is the UDAG reimbursement article for $230,000, defer the April 25th forward funding of the pension assessment in the amount of $300,000, and defer Article 26 stabilization in the amount of $949,139. We say defer, the town meeting would defer these 3 articles to the fall town meeting on October 26th. By deferring them, we free up $1,479,139 in free cash, if you will. It frees up this funding, which will allow the town to address any impacts from decreased state aid and other unforeseen impacts due to COVID-19 at the fall town meeting on October 26th of 2020. Let's look at Article 4 in your warrant, and the warrant is available on the town's website. And I also just want to point out all of the documents we're talking about, as well as additional budgetary documents, are available on the town's website. If you go to the town manager's page, there's a link for 2021 budget. You can find all of this material. So Article 4 is the omnibus budget, and we're going to take a brief overview of that budget. So I'll have Ms. Gabri, the finance manager, often puts together this slide called the budget building blocks that demonstrates sort of how we build a budget. So Lisa, if you'd give an overview.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So this is important for towns to have a balanced budget, so the revenues have to equal the expenses in any savings that we fund. So we will start with the revenue side. We expect $995,000 in state aid, just as Robert alluded to. There will be total tax levy of $25,000. That includes any previous debt exclusions that have been voted. We anticipate local receipts of just over $2.2 million. And free cash, which is already certified at $1.7 million. We anticipate a transfer from capital stabilization to fund some of the minor capital projects of $171,000. And then there's the impact of the enterprise funds, which is the net amount between the indirect costs, which are budgeted in the general fund, and any general fund subsidy that has to go to help out the enterprise funds. And then there's the cherry sheet charges, and included in that $400,000, the largest amount is the anticipated overlay, or what they call allowance for abatements and exemptions at this point. So the total projected revenue, this is before COVID, and really it's the same right now because we don't know any better, is just over $31 million. And you'll see on the right side our original budget that was put together over a series of several months. The omnibus of $15,626,000, which is about a 3% increase, right? And the Air Shirley Regional School District assessment, which includes the debt service on the high school and middle schools, of just over $12 million. The Neshoba Valley Regional High School Assessment, technical high school assessment of $870,000, which was a large increase, but that was mostly due to the number of students that will be attending there. And we anticipated OPEB funding, which we will still continue. We hope to continue at $300,000. Stabilization funding at $949,000. And then there's other articles, including the capital assets, the minor capital assets of $171,000 to be funded by the capital stabilization account. UDAG replenishment of $230,000. A forward funding pension of $300,000. And all other articles, there's some additional raise and appropriate articles such as weed control, and there's some financial computer raised article for like $6,000. There's several smaller articles that total about $174,000. Both sides, balanced budget, $31 million each side. That was our original budget. That's what's reflected in the town warrant. However, you did hear Robert speak of deferring certain articles in order to be better prepared for any adjustments that might need to happen in the fall.
Yes.
So with that, I'll swing back to Robert.
Thank you, Lisa. And for our viewers looking at this slide, just to orientate you under the expense and savings. So the omnibus, that is Article 4 in the warrant. The ASRSD assessment and the NVRTHS assessment, those are Articles 5 and 6 respectively. The OPEB article is its own article as well, which is Article 15. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the BOS recommendation, as well as the administration, is to defer the stabilization funding, which is Article 26. Lisa talked about the forward funding of the pension, that's Article 25. And the UDAG replenishment in $280,000 is Article 14. So on Monday night, we'll be recommending that Articles 14, 25, and 26 be deferred to the fall, and that's how we free up that approximately $1.4 million in free cash to prepare for the fall. This slide, and again, this whole presentation will be available on the town website. It's also going to be provided on Monday night as well, the revenue and expenditures information. And starting at the top box that says general fund revenues, there's that state aid number that we're preparing that there'll be an impact to in the fall. Again, that state aid, AIR is fortunate that we're not heavily reliant on state aid for the overall budget, that we can have a strategy to absorb that. The tax levy, when I talked earlier about how we're internally monitoring revenues, we are very concerned about this line as we move forward to the next set of tax payments. We understand that residents and businesses are struggling. There are impacts, increased unemployment, and so forth. We want to closely monitor the tax collections over the summer and as we move into the fall. Same with local receipts at $2.2 million. Again, monitoring that. We do, at this time, there's no evidence of financial disruption to those lines, but we do anticipate that. And again, on the free cash, we're recommending that town meeting defer about $1.4 million of that until the fall, when we have a better picture. You have below that the general fund expenditures. These are also reflected in the omnibus. This gives you the total amount spent in the FY21 budget by category: general government, public safety, public works, etc. At the top right, general fund revenues, you'll see our largest source of revenue is the tax levy at 83%. And as I mentioned, collections for FY 2020 are very strong, and now we will begin to monitor the impact for FY 21. The next largest category is local receipts at 8%, and fortunately, in AIR's case, state aid is at 3%. And then you have the general fund expenditures by category in a pie graph by percentage. The largest being education, which is the Air Shirley Regional School, and the Neshoba Regional Tech at 44%. General government and public safety being the next two largest. So it sort of gives you a percentage breakdown. This is the omnibus, the FY21 omnibus revenue since 2018. As you can see, revenue continues to grow and increase. Lisa, did you want to add anything on this?
I would just add, you'll see in the slide after this, the largest increase, just over $1 million, is in the tax levy, but the next largest increase is in free cash. The town did very well with free cash last year, so there was an increase of $767,000. That's all.
So you'll see, and Lisa was referring to this slide in the omnibus, looks at revenue movement, and on the far, which is my far right, you'll see the arrows next to the percentage indicating either an increase or a decrease. A slight increase in state aid, about a 4.5% increase in the tax base, and the tax base consists of residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. The debt exclusions, there's actually a decrease as some of those come off. Lisa?
There was, if you remember, there was a capital exclusion, which would have been under that line as well.
Yes.
This in fiscal 20 for the fire engine. So that, I think it was $650,000. So that's off of it this year because we purchased that. So that's a one-year impact. So that makes up for most of that decrease.
Mm-hmm. And again, you have all of the categories point out, as Lisa mentioned, free cash. There was a significant increase in the free cash for this year. And then similar with expenses, the omnibus operating expenses, again showing the trend in expenses from 2018 to 2021 graphically through a bar graph. And the next slide, which gives the detail, the next slide, I'm sorry, is the major drivers in the FY21 omnibus budget. So what are the major drivers to the budget? One of them obviously is health insurance at a $98,746 increase. Our Middlesex County retirement and pension increase. A decrease in the debt service, as Lisa has mentioned, in addition to the fire engine that had been purchased last year. Some increases in the police department, increases in the fire department, and those increases are largely personnel increases. The municipal government is largely in the public service business, and therefore our largest costs are always personnel and personnel benefits. So those are the increases, and then a 2.8% increase for public works. This shows, pie graph will show you the operating expenses by category. And as I just mentioned, all cities and towns, municipal governments are in the business of services and providing services. In order to provide those services, you need personnel, professional personnel to do that, whether it's fire, police, DPW, other professionals at town hall, and other departments. So the biggest piece of our expenses, 50%, is wages and benefits for employees. And you would find that's pretty standard almost in any city or town, at least in Massachusetts. That's the lion's share of it. Then benefits at 13%, and then you'll see the rest of the items there, but really want to point out the main piece. Lisa mentioned the school assessments, and then for those who are watching with their warrant, the Air Shirley Regional School District, this is Article 5, which town meeting is asked to approve the school assessment. There's a 3.26% increase. As you can see, the assessment increase at 3.7%. There is a decrease in the high school debt exclusion. That's AIR's portion for the high school project. And then below you have, which is illustrated in Article 6, the Neshoba Valley Technical High School. There is an increase of 13.8%. This increase is largely due to an increase, is due to an increase of students from AIR going to the Neshoba Valley Technical School. So again, that increase in students is largely what drives the increase in that assessment. So that's just sort of a high level sort of overview of the FY21 budget. And I want to point out, to sort of go along with that presentation, for those online, the new budget book for the town of Air is out and is online, and we will have hard copies of this available at town meeting. And the budget book provides a lot of key information that we've covered in more detail, as well as the budget process, the omnibus budget, and a lot of the information for Articles 7 through 10, which are the enterprise articles. It refers to a handout in the warrant. This is the handout that has the detailed information for Article 7 through 10. So, switching gears to the town meeting warrant, which was mailed to all households and is also available on the town's website, and there will be copies provided at town meeting, and it is up on the screen. The warrant was approved by the Board of Selectmen on April 7th and was posted at that time. The Finance Committee also voted to recommend all of the financial articles in the warrant. And originally, as I mentioned, town meeting would have been scheduled on May 11th, but due to COVID-19, the Board of Selectmen voted to defer the town meeting to June 15th at 7 p.m. So in the interest of time, because we definitely want to get to the majority of your questions, we'll just do a quick overview of some of the articles. So in the warrant, you have a table of contents that shows each of the articles, a description. It shows the financial impact, the general fund impact, if applicable, and it shows the position of the Board of Selectmen or FinCom on each article. Article 1 is just the town elections, which occurred on June 2nd, which were also deferred due to COVID-19. Article 2 is the salaries of elected officials is set by town meeting each year. This does represent a 2% cost of living increase, which was recommended by the administration on March 4th to the Board of Selectmen. Article 3 is the contract funding for the Air Town Hall Clerical Union ASME 93. So these are our town hall and clerical employees that are in union. A contract was negotiated for 3 years with them. The contract was negotiated by the town manager. It was ratified by the Board of Selectmen. And this is for the first year costs, which you can see in the explanatory note, is $23,196. The memorandum of agreement that has all of the terms of the contract can be found on the town's website under the Board of Selectmen's page. You can get all of the detail there. And at town meeting, I usually have one slide that just gives an overview of Article 3. Article 4 is the omnibus, and then you have the omnibus printed in the warrant. And as many of you who have been to town meeting and the folks who haven't before, Article 4 is read by the moderator. It's moved by a selectman, the Board of Selectmen, and then the moderator will read each of these lines in the omnibus, and he will ask participants to say the word pass when he reads a line. And you would say pass if you have a question or a point you'd like to make on that line. So he will read through the whole omnibus and we'll mark as people say pass, and then we'll come back to each pass and ask those questions. What you have here, and the biggest challenge we have is printing it in here. You have all of the information, the proposed amount, the difference, and the percentage of that difference, and then the notes that explain what the increase is for each item. We will come back to this when we open up to question, because I'm sure folks have specific questions, perhaps on line items, in the interest of time to go through all of the line items. I mentioned Article 5 is the Air Shirley Regional School District Assessment, and Article 6 is the Neshoba Valley Technical Assessment as well. And both of those budget presentations are available on the town's website. They were both done back in February to the Board of Selectmen, and all of the detail is there. I mentioned the enterprise articles are Articles 7 through 10, solid waste, ambulance, sewer, and water. And in the warrant, it says a handout will be provided. There's additional information in the budget book. That's the handout. We used to do individual handouts. They're all in the budget book. I don't know, Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to mention on enterprise funds?
I would just give you a general description of what enterprise funds are in case somebody out there doesn't know, don't understand. So for certain operations of the town which generate revenues, enterprise DOR allows you to set up those operations as if it were more or less kind of like a private organization, so they're separately funded. For the revenues, what the intention is that the revenues will cover the expenses of that enterprise fund. So there's no, the goal is to not have an impact on the general fund other than to give back some of the money to the general fund for the indirect costs that relate to the people that work for the enterprise funds, but the costs such as health insurance is in the general fund. I'm not sure that's clear, but the goal is for them to be self-balancing in the end, and that is our goal. It's been our goal. The ones that have been a concern, the one that has been a concern, although the town has done a good job in managing the amount of general fund subsidy, the biggest one is solid waste. The next one that we have to take a look at is the ambulance, mostly because the revenues are restricted by the federal government and what they pay for Medicare and Medicaid payments.
And I just want to point out, thank you, Lisa, that in the cases of Article 7, 9, and 10, the solid waste, sewer, and water. The town has a rate review committee, which consists of citizens, a selectman representative, and the respective department heads, such as the DPW superintendent and the finance manager, that meet quarterly to review all matters related to the rates. And in the case of the solid waste rates, they make a recommendation usually in November to the Board of Selectmen, and water and sewer rate recommendations are usually made at the beginning of April, and the Board of Selectmen ultimately adopt or approve those recommendations. So if you're looking for more information or minutes on that process, look at the Rate Review Committee webpage on the town website, has all of the minutes and background information to this process. Articles 11 and 12, and I want to point out that in the interest of time, departments will be prepared at town meeting with presentations on specific items. These are the capital budget items, if you will. The capital is in the town of Air. Again, there's a capital planning committee that generally meets monthly from October through March, and that consists of residents, a selectman's representative from the FinCom, and the respective department heads. And we have a capital planning policy that is available in the finance policies on the town's website, that this is a whole year-long process to get to this point. So capital budget requests under Article 11 are items that the town would be borrowing for. And our policy is any item that is $35,000 or more, we generally borrow for, and any item generally up to $30,000, we try to pay for straight out. And that's actually Article 12 is the capital budget items that we're looking to pay for from capital stabilization. And going back to Article 11 are the items that we would borrow for. So Article 11, we have up here, is asking town meeting to authorize the treasurer and the Board of Selectmen to borrow for these projects. And you'll see the department, the item, and the amount. So for example, information technology, townwide server upgrades, $45,000. And again, we want to get to your questions, and if you have questions on these, we'll answer the specific questions, but also at town meeting, there'll be presentation on these items as folks ask. Article 13 is a transfer article for police department high-risk prevention equipment. It transfers this amount from a previous article that the project came in under budget, and that was the evidence room for the police station. Article 14, the selectmen will be recommending, this is one of them that we defer to the fall. This was to replenish the UDAG fund for the Worthingdale eminent domain settlement, and we're looking to just defer this at this time to the fall. Article 15, Lisa mentioned earlier, the OPEB fund in the amount of $300,000. $129,700 comes from the local meals tax, and $170,300 from free cash, totaling $300,000. Then we have the raise and appropriate articles. This is asking for each of these articles the town to raise and appropriate this sum. The articles under raise and appropriate contribute to the setting of the tax rate in the fall. Article 16 is for the first year interest for all of the items in Article 11 that we would borrow for. This would cover the general fund borrowing costs at $60,775. Article 7 is funding for the aquatic weed control for the town ponds in the amount of $30,000 as recommended by the Conservation Commission. Article 18 is funding for the Conservation Fund in the amount of $5,000. The town previously set up a conservation fund that has a balance of about $500,000 in it for the purchase of acquiring conservation and open space land. Article 19 is a matching funding for a firefighters grant. The fire department's applying for a grant that you have to put the matching funds up in advance for $2,500. If we don't get the grant, this funding would just revert back to the general fund. Article 20 is funding for fire department tactical ballistic gear in the amount of $10,000. This is a contractual item with the fire department. This would purchase 6 sets of tactical ballistic gear, which consists of a bulletproof helmet and a bulletproof vest for firefighters. It would only be used, per Chief Pedrazi, in the event of an active shooter or mass shooting event where EMT personnel would have to accompany police personnel to treat wounded individuals. Article 21 seeks $10,000 for the town's 150th celebration, which takes place in 2021. Article 22 is funding for the Munis financial software upgrades for the town. Articles 23 and 24 actually sort of go together. Article 23 asks town meeting to adopt the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13D, which would create a reserve fund for future payments of accrued liabilities for compensated absences. So what does that mean? What that means is when employees decide to retire or separate from service from the town, generally, whether federal or state law or contractual provisions, they are owed certain things upon their separation. How we've historically have done it is sort of on a case-by-case basis. Somebody retires, we plan for it. What has happened is there isn't a plan in the sense that we have to then fund that retirement, if you will, out of the respective department, which results in going to reserve funds and so forth. What Article 23 would do would allow the town to create a reserve fund within the budget solely for the purposes of paying these absences and out. And so it's a good financial planning tool for the town. Article 23 just asks town meeting whether or not to create the fund. If Article 23 passes, it creates the fund. There's no money associated with it. Article 24 assumes Article 23 passes. If Article 23 doesn't pass, then Article 24 would be withdrawn. But Article 24 would fund the reserve fund for compensated absences with $50,000 from free cash. Lisa, the finance manager, has calculated that over the next 3 years, if we could get this reserve fund to about $150,000, would be ideal for the purposes of all of the future retirements that we foresee coming. And it will allow us to plan for those retirements and fund for those retirements without having to hit the departmental budgets moving forward. Article 25 is again the forward funding of the town's pension assessment in $300,000. This is another one of those articles that the selectmen will be recommending that we defer to the fall. In Article 26, the stabilization fund for $949,139. The stabilization fund, think of it as the town's savings account. At this time, given the COVID-19 situation, we want to defer this so we free up these funds for town meeting in the fall. So we're looking to defer Article 26. Articles 27, 28, and 29 are the Community Preservation Act articles. And I just want to point out in the cases of Article 27 and 28, at the time that the warrant was approved and posted on April 7th, the Community Preservation Committee was unable to meet due to COVID-19. We were just in the beginnings of this. So the warrant was printed without the recommended amounts because the Community Preservation Committee had not met. And that's in both the explanatory notes on Article 27 and 28. Since then, this Community Preservation Committee actually was able to meet on April 23rd. And what's on the screen was just posted today on the town's website, again under the budget page and the CPC page. Highlighted in yellow are the amounts recommended by the CPC for these articles. So you'll see if you go scroll down to Article 27, those are the amounts. And then Article 28, we have these articles every year. These numbers represent the 3% increase that was passed by voters on June 2nd, which was a two-part process. the town meeting in the fall of 2019 approved an article to put this ballot question on the annual town election, which it was. The election was delayed because of COVID-19, and it did pass the ballot. So these numbers represent the 3%. When the Community Preservation Committee met on April 23rd, in full disclosure, they approved both 1% and 3% recommendations because it was unclear, the election had not happened, which would pass. So this new sheet is going to be passed out to everybody, the sheet on the screen. When you come to town meeting, think of it as a supplement for Article 27 and 28, and it is in color. It highlights that new information for you. Article 28, Article 28, 29, the Historic Resources Inventory Project, was known at the time at the amount of $20,000. And then Article 30, this is a bylaw amendment. It proposes to change the name of Board of Selectmen to Select Board. This is being done in towns throughout the Commonwealth. Closest to us, Harvard and Groton and others are changing the name from Selectmen to Select Board to sort of modernize the language and to be more inclusive in the name of the town's chief executive body. Then we have Article 31 is a zoning bylaw amendment, and under state law, the planning board is required to make a report or a presentation on town meeting on this, which they will do, but it looks to reduce the parking spaces in the downtown district from 1.5 per unit to 1. And the planning board will be speaking to that at town meeting. Articles 32 and 33 have to do what's called the General Code Project, and there's a great detailed presentation on the town's website that the assistant town manager put together and actually did one of these sessions on Tuesday for. Both of these look to renumber and update the organization of the town's bylaws in the case of Article 32 and the town's zoning bylaw in the case of Article 33. They do not change the bylaws' legal substance unless there was something that was in conflict with law, which would make it null and void anyway. But this looked to centralize and organize all of the town's bylaws, including on a web-based platform, so that residents will be able to use a search function for the bylaws and be able to clearly find the information they need. So think of Article 32 and 33 sort of as reformatting articles. Article 34 is a street acceptance article. The DPW superintendent will be prepared to speak on this, and we just posted on the town's website today the maps, the layout of these roads, and we'll have those available at town meeting if there's questions. And lastly, Article 35 is a grant of easement to National Grid on Groton Street. As many are probably familiar, the marked parking facility is completed, and this easement is to allow the placement of a pole for some electric utilities to go to the parking garage facility. And this article would authorize the Board of Selectmen to negotiate the easement. And we'll have a map for that as well up on the website for folks' interest. So I know that's a lot of information. There's a lot of articles. But the most important is we want to hear from you and your questions. So that's sort of a, if you will, that's sort of the crash overview course on the warrant articles. So at this time, we really want to hear your questions and points of clarification. So we're going to open it up to questions. I just ask if you just unmute your microphone on your device and just state your name for everybody's benefit and ask away. We appreciate your patience with the presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Is this Sarah Withy?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Sarah.
I just have a couple questions, and I don't think, I just have a couple questions. Did you say how much you think local aid will go down? How much it,
I didn't say how much it would go down. We're expecting $995,000 in local aid for FY21.
Mhm.
And nobody knows what the reduction will be. But what we do know from the Department of Revenue, and they're still studying this, they anticipate at least a $7 billion shortfall in state revenues. So with that magnitude of a shortfall on state revenues, we have a pretty strong feeling that local aid to all cities and towns is going to be reduced in the fall of 2020. We do not know by much. The worst case scenario would be all 995,000. Hence why we're recommending deferring those 3 articles to free up 1.4 million. We don't believe it will be the total amount, but there will be some type of decrease.
how much do we have in the capital stabilization fund?
We have in the capital stabilization fund $2,162,121.
Okay.
And again, if I just point out real quick, Article 25, Article 26, the stabilization article, which we're asking to defer at this time. Before COVID-19 happened, we were recommending the lion's share of the free cash, over 900,000, to go into stabilization, capital stabilization. But due to COVID-19, we're advising we defer this article, and let's see when town meeting comes together in October, let's see where we're at, and maybe we can make a further transfer if town meeting wants into capital stabilization. But for right now, we're recommending to defer that to the fall.
Okay. I just have 2 more questions.
Sure.
On page 22 of the town meeting guide, there's a line for debt exclusions. And I was just wondering, could you tell me,
Okay. Page 22.
yep,
Debt service?
In the budget book?
yeah, debt service, yeah.
Yes,
of the
sir.
budget.
Yeah.
Sorry to switch.
No,
Can you just explain again why it went down?
sure. I'm going to have Lisa Gabri, the finance manager. The question is, why is debt service gone down 100?
First, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. You're talking about the budget major drivers page.
Yeah, and it went down.
Regular debt service, not necessarily, well, it's everything. It's actually all of it. And as we pay more principal down, the debt service is principal and interest. So the net becomes less because the interest is basically less. And we paid off, we continue to pay off old debt. So we're managing our debt very well, I believe.
No, I'm not. I'm just learning. But why did you said that went down because you paid off the fire truck?
No, that was a capital exclusion, which means it's paid for, so it has nothing to do with debt. So the taxes are raised in 1 year, we pay for the fire truck, and the taxes go back down to wherever they're going to be. This is debt service, so it doesn't impact, that purchase did not impact debt service. So this is, debt service is when we borrow for a capital item, when we borrow like a mortgage, right, for your house. So when you borrow, the more you pay down the principal, the less the interest is on the next year's payment. In addition to that, we've been paying off certain debt and not replacing it as fast as we pay it off, basically due to our capital planning policy, which requires that anything over $300,000 has to go out for some kind of exclusion, whether it's a debt exclusion or a capital exclusion. So we're managing our debt very well.
Okay.
See, it's only like 6% of our operating budget, the debt service.
So just to clarify too, Sarah, real quick. So the debt service on page 22 that you referenced is the town's overall debt service. The question earlier, or the point we made earlier on page 20, under the FY21 omnibus budget revenue, the debt exclusions, there was a decrease of about $568,000. 678. That's where the capital exclusion for last year's fire truck was. So that's been paid for, so that's coming off.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I just have one more question, okay? On the ambulance article, so we're gonna pay $86,000. Is that after the reimbursement from Shirley?
Okay, so we're on Article 8, ambulance enterprise, and the question is the 86,000 from ambulance return.
Is that after the reimbursement from Shirley?
Are you thinking about the dispatch, the regional dispatch at the police station?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the police department.
Okay.
The cost of the police department is run, the cost is included in the omnibus, but the assessment that we get from Shirley, it has to be a general fund revenue. So that's in our projected revenues. The revenue end is in our projected revenues. Right now, I have it as $120,000 because I leveled it because we don't have a new agreement yet, but we're in the process of completing that agreement. I expect it to be more than $120,000. But right now it's just level funded, so I'm pretty conservative with the revenues, but the cost is included in the police department budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Another question or comment? Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Laurie Sable. I have a question.
Hey, Laurie Sable, how are you?
I'm good. How's everybody over there?
Good, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. And I think I'm probably just not listening as carefully as I should. But in Article 11, you meant, and I don't have all of the documents in front of me, so that's my bad. There was a line item for road paving.
Yes.
And it seemed like a low amount for road paving. And I'm assuming that more money is available.
Yes.
So is it $150,000?
Yes. Excellent question. So for everybody's benefit, Article 11, capital budget requests under DPW highway, you'll see road paving of $150,000. This is not the total road paving budget for FY21 for the town of Air. The town of Air receives Chapter 90 money, which every city and town in Massachusetts receives. That's over $200,000 in additional paving funds. This $150,000 for the last 5 years or so, on recommendation of the DPW superintendent and the capital planning committee, has been recommending each year this $150,000 to supplement the town's Chapter 90 paving. So you're absolutely correct. It's not just $150,000 for the whole year. This is to supplement our Chapter 90 amount.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yep. Other questions, comments, things you always wondered about with the town meeting warrant or the budget? There's so much material to cover.
I would have a question.
Hi, is this David Bedurtha?
It is.
Hi, David. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty well. I guess that some of these questions would be maybe Lisa could ask. So,
Sure.
when you look at the omnibus, the final numbers come down to the total operating budget went up by 3.3%.
Correct. That's correct.
Yep.
And this may be a confusion on my part, but I thought the omnibus could not go up by like more than 2.5% a year. What am I missing?
No, the tax levy, without debt exclusions, can go up only 2.5%. And I'm oversimplifying that, okay? But that has to do with Prop 2.5. You saw the revenue projections. Obviously, we have more revenue than just taxes. We have local receipts over $2 million.
Okay.
Right. So that is not a requirement of any municipality.
And David, just to add along that question, and it's a good question. So you're right, this year's omnibus represents a total increase of 3.3%. The average omnibus percent increase since 2014 to the present, the average has been 5.1%. And this is something that the selectmen, the finance committee, and myself do take very serious. Our goal is to always minimize that percent increase to the best of our ability. This year, it's 3.3%. Last year, it was 5.5%. And the average has been 5.1% since 2014.
Okay,
Thank you.
if all articles were to pass,
Yep.
What would the increase be for this year? If you were funding all of the capital expenses and everything else, is it possible what that total percentage would be?
So if the omnibus passes as presented in the warrant under Article 4, the increase for the omnibus would be 3.3%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if everything passed in the entire warrant article, including all the new expenses, such as the capital budget requests and things like that? If you were to take that all into account, do you know what the increase would be?
Well, that's a good question, and Lisa and I can work on the math because it's a little bit more complicated, but let me offer a couple things. So the budget, as mentioned, would be 3.3%. If all of the items in Article 11 pass, that's the capital budget request to borrow, that's over 5.4 million. Article 16, those first year borrowing costs would be $60,775. That's based on everything passing in number 11. In number 12, Article 12, those capital budget requests totaling $171,000, those we're looking to pay directly out of the capital stabilization. So that's the fund with a balance of just over 2.1 million. And then lastly, it was a good question. If you look at the raise and appropriate articles, which are Articles 16 through 21, actually 16 through 22, if these are approved, the cost for these is factored into setting the tax rate for next year, which is done in the fall. So again, and we often talk about this, as sort of counterintuitive to how one generally thinks about it. These actions at town meeting through 16 through 22 would impact the tax rate for next year.
Could I just add something?
Go ahead, Lisa.
So you remember the slide that I first did about the balanced budget? So it showed the building blocks that showed the revenues on one side and the expenses on the other side.
We'll pull it up.
So the original budget, without deferring any articles, was just over $31 million. It matched the revenue projections. Right?
Okay.
So there's a slide that shows omnibus budget
Okay, here's the
revenue
building.
movement. So you see how they match? I'm not sure where this is. What David's asking, I believe, since the revenues match the expenses, that he's looking for the percentage here, that percent increase. This line, whatever this would have been, which is not on here, every other percentage is on here. The bottom line, you're asking what that 1.3 million divided by the 28.8 million, what percentage that is. I believe that's what you're saying. But that's not what we intend to do at the June town meeting anyway. We still have no reason to believe that at this point that our revenues should be adjusted at this point. But we are deferring those just over $1.4 million of free cash spending, if you will, until the fall, until we see how much we have to impact, how much our state aid, for instance, or some of our local receipts might be impacted by COVID-19. So and that's not even an increase in spending, because the majority of it, a lot of it was going to savings accounts, if you will. That, stabilization is a savings account. Capital stabilization is a savings account. OPEB cost is for future liability. So it's not really a savings account, but it offsets a future liability.
Okay, well, all right, yeah, I will study some of that again just to see if I can get a little clarity on my own part, I guess. A general question maybe for Robert was, so when you're talking about wage increases, is wage increases, step increases plus the cost of living, or is that all like one thing? I mean, you get a step increase for an employee plus a cost of living, or is it all one raise?
Okay, so the question is for everybody's benefit, has to do with raises or personnel raises within the budget. And so on that topic, briefly, there's a few areas where the issue of increases come into effect. On Article 4, the omnibus budget. The omnibus budget contains a cost of living adjustment of 2% for all of the non-union personnel. And in addition, so that's the non-union personnel, the call firefighters, and the elected officials. And the note from Article 4 in the warrant, that COLA recommendation of 2% was recommended to the Board of Selectmen on March 4th. We don't just pull that number out of the air. The Benefits and Payroll Department spends a lot of time on this. We look at what the Federal Reserve increase is for cost of living, Social Security cost of living. Kevin Johnston does a comparative survey of all of the cities and towns in Massachusetts, and we recommended a 2% cost of living adjustment. And keep in mind that was on March 4th. Obviously, March 4th seems like it was 20 years ago. It was a different world, if you will. The question, the 2% COLA in the omnibus, the cost impact for FY21 is $42,000.
I have to add something. That is just for non-union.
That's for non-union,
personnel.
non-union personnel. Article, go ahead, David. Yep.
No, that was it. So yeah, no, that's for all of the non-union. Got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Any other questions? Or anyone who hasn't asked a question that has a question or a point or concern related to the budget or the warrant?
Well, can David ask another question if nobody jumps in?
Go ahead, David. Yep.
I'm a little, I'd like to understand your thinking in essentially the general government, where we're taking $5,000 away from the fireworks display or the fireworks. Mm-hmm. And instead of saving that money, it would coincidentally, we're adding $5,000 to the holiday lights line item. I guess I'm not quite sure. Also, when we're talking new plantings and more lights down to the Rotary, I'm not sure that, I really want our money going into additional lighting at the state Rotary. But why aren't we just saving that money from the 4th of July?
Okay, so a couple things. So you're on the omnibus up at the top, the 4th of July celebration. As you know, and everyone knows, the 4th of July fireworks for this year were postponed back in the fall for security concerns and public safety concerns. That was pre-COVID-19, which perhaps the irony is they would probably have been deferred this year. We were going to have the parade. That Alan and the committee work on that's been deferred. What this recommends in the budget is $5,000 for the 4th of July celebration for next year. And we have a lot of work, as you know, to do on that as far as the issue of the fireworks and resolving those security issues that existed pre-COVID-19 with that. But now, depending on how COVID-19 proceeds, what we do about that. So it was reduced because there were no fireworks. The balance of that money is usually, as you know, raised by the committee, the generous support of businesses and residents in the town. The holiday lights, if you've noticed, the display that we do as part of the Holiday Lights program on the Rotary, the street posts down here, the town hall, and for Alan's holiday candlelight stroll. The state has put in significantly more trees at the Rotary as part of their project. And we were putting the 5,000 for holiday lights an increase to further enhance that display at the Rotary. So that was the thinking behind both of those at this time.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I'm slightly in disagreement with that, but I guess I look forward to having that discussion at town meeting. I like the light displays, the lights that are there, but I don't think every time the state does something that we should be increasing our budget to make up for additional lighting. But that's the personal thing, and maybe I can bring that up at town meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're coming up sort of on our time limit, as I know the Conservation Commission will be using the Zoom platform for their 6:30 meeting. Are there any other questions or comments about the budget or town meeting, or about the town meeting plan for Monday? And I want to just stress that you please, if you have any questions on the budget, on the town meeting warrant, on Monday's plan for town meeting, do not hesitate to contact me at 978-772-8220 or at tm@air.ma.us. Please contact us. That's why we're here. We want to make sure your questions are answered. We want to make sure you have all the information that you're interested in, information that you need to make the informed decisions at town meeting. Any other questions? Okay, so to conclude, I want to thank Lisa Gabri and Carly Antonellis for all of their help this evening. I also want to thank the Air Board of Selectmen for their continued support and their work on all of these efforts, as well as the Air Finance Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, and frankly, all of our town committees, commissions, and boards, which are largely comprised of the residents of Air that make our town so special and successful. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen and all town departments, I also want to thank all residents for their continued patience and cooperation and support during this unprecedented and difficult time. I'm pleased to report that we continue to provide the necessary municipal services for residents, and we are looking forward to a successful town meeting. Again, in preparation for town meeting, please check out the town website, specifically the 2021 budget page for all of the budget information, the town meeting page for all of the town meeting information, and do not hesitate to contact us before town meeting, and of course, we will be at town meeting as well. So until we see you on Monday, please stay safe and stay healthy, and thank you for your interest and your participation tonight. Have a good night.